Broadcasting live. It's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and
your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2.
Hello
1.
and welcome into the Computer America Show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And folks, if you only knew, I'm your co-host, Ben.
And welcome into our all Linux show here today on Computer America. Yeah, it's all about Linux and more, and we have a terrific show planned for you. Now, if you have a comment or question for our guest, we'll introduce him momentarily. Give us a call at 347-884-8881. That's 347-884-8881. We'll get you on and get you through. Or you can go to any page at ComputerAmerica.com, and what you can do is just go in the upper right-hand corner of any page. It'll say "Submit a question." It's a link. Click it, and you'll be taken to our question submission page. Then all you have to do is type in your question, hit the submit button. Ben and I will see it instantaneously. The other thing that we invite you to do is join our live video stream. We are a radio broadcast, but we also provide live video streaming at ComputerAmerica.com. You can go to our website at ComputerAmerica.com. On any page there, the menu bar will say Show Lounge. Click it. You'll be taken to our live video streaming page. You'll be joined to the show already in progress, and you can watch the Computer America show. You can see myself. You can see Ben. You'll be able to see our guest, Marcel, Gagné. And also Ben has the technology to display websites, videos, movies, everything that we're talking about on today's show. You can see as well. It's all there waiting for you at ComputerAmerica.com, the internet home of our radio broadcast. So, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have anything that you want to mention before we introduce our guest today on today's show?
No. I just hope that everyone out there. Yesterday we had on Darius Derekshani, so please go check that out. It was a very, very interesting interview, as he always is, because anything to do with graphics and graphic design and kind of movie animation, things like that. He covers that, and it's always very entertaining. So, please go check out our archives. It would really help us out. And, if you miss a show, there are ways of going back and finding it. But
again, because Marcel Gagné, and Darius Derekshani is now our new Computer America graphics correspondent, who appears here on the.
So he signed the contract, right?
Yeah, he signed the contract.
Oh, good. See, whenever a new correspondent is made, we send them a contract written in demon's blood. So, all it's legalese kind of stuff. But yeah, it's nice, very nice.
Well, let's get our guest on a show who's waiting in the wings here patiently. Marcel Gagné is the author of several books, including Moving to Linux, Kiss the Blue Screen of Death Goodbye, now in its 2nd edition. Other books include Moving to Ubuntu Linux now, and his newest title is Moving to Free Software. He was also a Linux Journal monthly columnist. His column was titled Cooking with Linux. Marcel was also a regular columnist for Linux Magazine, and he was senior editor and columnist for Ubuntu Magazine and a number of other magazine publications. Please welcome author and columnist and Computer America correspondent Marcel Gagné to the show. Marcel, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Hello. Hi. It's good to be here. It's a lovely day to be alive. It's beautiful. It's sunny outside. Spring has finally arrived in Waterloo. It has taken a hell of a long time, but it's finally here.
All right.
So it feels good. It feels good out here. It's
yeah.
I even took a picture of little green things coming out of tree branches yesterday. It was like, on my, and I posted it on Instagram, because, that's the kind of crap that people post on Instagram.
Well,
Uh,
I remember the first time that I got an Instagram account, and my friend that was kind of pushing me to get it, I told her that I was just going to fill it up with selfies and pictures of my food and my pets, and I was like, I'm going to be a very, very unique soul on there. I'm not sure if anyone has done this yet. And
I actually I find Instagram kind of fascinating because it's like it's just stuff. It's like it's not like a communications media like I mean even on Twitter it's like you post these little ideas and so forth. Instagram it's like oh here's a pretty picture and you post it and that's it. I mean that's like and that's all anybody does. They all look at each other's pretty pictures. Oh, I
right.
do like that. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that was interesting. Oh, thank you. And then, of course, I realize that now they've decided to go beyond the 15-second video clip. I don't know if that's
Oh no,
official yet.
that's Snapchat.
Oh, is that Snapchat? Okay, well, on Instagram, it's still 15 seconds then.
Oh
You
no, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Instagram, you're allowed 15
I'm,
second
I'm
videos.
absolutely right. I was right the first time, and now you
were right.
confused me.
Well, to me, like I never see videos that often, so like I forget that Instagram even does video.
Yeah, it's got these little video clips. It's like it's like here's one of my latest ones there.
it looks like a boardwalk.
It is. It's just me walking on the boardwalk and recording it. That's the whole thing.
Right to think it's an endless loop of you walking on the boardwalk.
That's it. It's like 15 seconds playing over and over and over again of a boardwalk. It's like
But like the key to Instagram though isn't about being particularly pretty or being particularly interesting or being particularly kind of anything to an extreme. I think the trick to Instagram and to getting a large follower base and kind of just getting kind of making it quote unquote is learning how to talk in hashtags because that's so important.
Well, I know this sounds really bizarre, but I'm actually my Instagram account isn't about me getting a lot of followers. It's just something for the hell of it. Like I have 50 whole followers on Instagram.
Oh my!
That's it. And I've never actually other than today, I don't think I've ever publicly stated that I have an Instagram account before today. I think this is the first time I've ever mentioned. By the way, if you're interested, I'm Free Thinker at Large on Instagram. If you want to see what kind of crap I post, it's like and I've got one here that says please do not feed the animals, and I've occasionally I post pictures like from my gaming. This one is from SimCity. Like it's just crap. I mean,
right.
But if you're interested in that kind of crap, then hey.
Computer America exclusive, the first
follow
time.
Follow my Instagram account. Yes, exactly. But I honestly do not take my Instagram account particularly seriously. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I take any of the things I post on particularly seriously. But there you go.
Now,
how do we get into this anyway?
Yeah, we're going to be doing. We asked Marcel to give us some stuff. There's a couple of things which I'm not sure exactly why we have it up there, but we're going to be talking about the wine of the day that you have, and a couple of topics. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to post it, but it will be posted. Actually, it will be. It'll be posted if you go to computeramerica.com and you click on the picture of Marcel, there'll be a thing that says cheat notes, and it'll actually be, you click on it, it'll open up a Google Docs document, and you can see everything that we're going to be talking about today. So not only can you watch Ben, if you're watching us, you can see Ben. He'll be displaying everything in the links, but also the cheat notes are there for you to follow along as well. Now, what is this about? It's the and.
That's great. It starts with
I like that song.
birds and snakes and airplanes.
Now, why is it the end of the world as we know it? Are you going to be talking about that too?
Absolutely. I'm going to be talking about why it's the end of the world as we know it. In fact, it's a big story. It's the big news story this time around. Like, it's a huge news story. Actually, there's several huge news stories. It was actually an interesting news month. I'm quite fascinated with it. But why do we talk about wine? Well, because we always do wine. It's a thing. I mean, when I was doing the Cooking with Linux column in Linux Journal, which I did like for 10 years, monthly column for 10 years, I always picked a wine. So for the show here, just to carry on that tradition, I picked a wine. So let's cover that. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, I have just opened a fresh bottle of 2015 Kim Crawford Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, which, by the way, is a wine that I buy on a regular basis. It is wonderful. It's really, really nice. It's kind of
It looks
it's
delicious.
it is delicious. It's
Which year?
light. It's crisp.
2014?
What's that? Sorry, this is the 2015. This one.
2015, okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's a New Zealand, Marlborough, New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc. It's,
You know,
Yeah, right? It's like we never hear about the dang country, and then within the course of like 2 weeks, we have 2 guests and now a wine from New Zealand.
We're just talking to Auckland, New Zealand. We had our guest.
really?
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah, exactly. Or day before yesterday, actually. Talking about, he was actually the
director of video of indie game development for New Zealand.
for New Zealand, right?
Nice.
They're 16 hours ahead of us. So it was like the day after, and like.
But that doesn't affect the taste of the wine, I bet.
It does. It doesn't. This is a great wine. This is like it's light. It's crisp. It's got very very definite pineapple overtones. A little bit of melon, lemon. It's got a nice citrus finish. It's spectacular. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to treat yourself to every once in a while. Honestly, Kim Crawford, Sauvignon Blanc, Marlborough. Just do it. Find your local liquor store and pick up a bottle. It's fantastic.
Sounds delicious.
And how many people have got an excuse, to drink wine during the day while they're doing a radio show?
Especially everyone who does radio behind the scenes.
Oh! You just let out a big bad secret there.
I
Everybody's gonna think
know.
that's all we do.
It's what greases the wheels.
We've all got a little Mickey under the table. We just go, and then get back over it.
Now that's the secret.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Once upon a time. Sorry, go ahead, please, Craig. Interrupt me.
No. So this is a Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed, it is.
Who is Kim Crawford?
Who's Kim Crawford? That's a good. I think she was an actress, wasn't she? Who is Kim Crawford? Let's Google it. Who can Google it faster? I feel awful about that. It's like, who's Kim Crawford? She's the one who comes up with these great wines, But Kim Crawford.
I think she just makes wine.
Folks, Kim Crawford Wines, popular in New Zealand. Yeah, she's just somebody who does wine. It's like, it's Kim Crawford.
Okay.
Well, actually, Kim Crawford's a guy.
Oh. I think he just says.
Kim Crawford is a guy, and Erica Crawford is business partner and wife of Kim Crawford. So see, I've been living under the impression that Kim was a woman all this time. I thought she does great wines, man. No, Kim's a guy.
Folks, if there's ever been like a technology in modern history that can tell you more, Google is so scary in what it can pull up so quickly.
Okay, listen. What do I say every month? I'm going to say it again this month. God, I hope Google isn't evil.
Right.
Because I live my life hooked into Google. I mean, I rely on Google to get me where I'm going. I mean, I've tossed my GPS. My car GPS is of no use to me now. It's all Google. It's like Google, navigate to whatever, and I just do whatever the hell it tells me. So if Google is evil, we are in deep, deep trouble, people. So I really hope they're not evil. Google, I really hope you're not evil.
Yeah, we just did a story, and I don't know if we're going to be covering kind of ahead of no. Anyways, I don't know if we're going to be covering it, but we just did a story yesterday about how Vizio is going to be building in Google Chrome into all of their new smart TVs.
Yeah, the Chrome. You have the Chromecast directly without the dongle.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So Google is getting everywhere, including smart television.
So, I was reading. I found out the other day. Just as a shock, I was talking to my wife. She's looking for Sally's looking for a new smartphone, and I've had this Motorola Moto G second generation for a year and a half now at least. What's that? Sorry.
It's brand new. No cracks, no scratches.
Well, I'm an adult. I don't I don't whack and crack and scratch my phones.
Yeah.
I know it's a badge of honor if you're a teenager. It's like, look at how badly beat up my phone is. Obviously, I use it on a regular basis. No, I actually do use my phone constantly, but I like it to be nice and shiny, and I even clean off the screen because I like it to be shiny. Oh, look, there's Craig on my phone. Anyway, but the point is, she was saying, well, who owns Motorola now? It's like, that's a big question, because everybody owns everybody at some point here, and it's like, well, Motorola was bought by Google at some point there, and then Google sold them off, and I believe they're owned by Lenovo. Correct me if I'm wrong here. No?
I think so.
Yeah. So I think a Motorola phone is actually a Lenovo phone these days. So
All right. Okay. All right.
Oh, this is like just
my reflection.
Yeah, look, there's Craig being reflected. Anyway, I haven't had that much to drink yet. I just want to make that clear.
I'm okay with you having a nice-looking phone as long as you aren't one of those people who keeps the plastic, the plastic little.
No. That's just wrong. That's just wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's those people who go to the store and they buy those, those coatings that you can put on the phones. It's like, we've all got Gorilla Glass now, which is virtually indestructible. Why do you even want to coat your phone anymore?
I actually do those.
And all the new phones are going to be water resistant and.
Well, that's the new Samsung.
S7. It's about time. It's about time. Seriously, I have had my son. Over the last few years. Now, this has only happened twice, but it's twice that was very expensive. He dropped my phone about 3 years ago. He dropped it in the toilet. Never recovered. And then one day, again, a few years ago, he hasn't done this recently. He took a brand new tablet that I had, and he was walking around outside, and he dropped it in the swimming pool. Like, just, willy-nilly. It's like, oh, I wonder what happens if I drop it in the swimming pool. Like, dude!
Science, it's very important for the continuation of the human knowledge. But I gotta say, phones and toilets, it may seem like a funny subject, but that is literally the most common way to destroy a phone.
Oh, I have no doubts whatsoever. Because what do you do when you're sitting in the toilet? It used to be when I was a kid, we had my dad called the bathroom the library. Okay, and he referred to it as the library. And the reason it was the library is there was actually a bookcase in the bathroom with books and newspapers and stuff on it. So what you did when you went to the bathroom, it's like, oh, well, let me see, what book was I reading? You pick up on whatever novel you were working on, or the newspaper or whatever. That's what the bathroom was. Well, it hasn't changed except that now we drag our phones and tablets into the bathroom, and
Right.
That's how we do our reading.
Well,
Too much information?
it could be. I lost my digital watch into a toilet too, so I certainly.
Welcome everyone to the Computer Miracle Toilet episode.
Yes, but it's amazing now. Anybody who uses the bathroom now knows the exact time. This is amazing.
But it's good to know that in very very near future, good to know that in very very near future that
You're killing me.
that people are going to be able to have their phone, and if they drop it in a toilet amount of water, or spill a drink on it, or do something to their phone isn't immediately going to just die.
Yeah.
That is a good feeling.
Yeah, it's long overdue for something like that. Okay, look, you've got a big audience out there, Craig, and I think, Craig and Ben, and I think that today the three of us should come up with a pact, okay? We need to come up with a name other than phone. Who the hell uses these things to make phone calls anyway? Seriously, when was the last time you actually called someone on this thing? Okay, you use it to take pictures, you use it to surf the web, you use it to play games, you use it to read books. Mostly, I mean, it's a camera a lot more than it's a phone, but you use it, to check up on, what's the weather? I use it as a GPS to navigate in my car. I can't remember the last time I actually made a phone call on this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I make phone calls quite a bit, and
You do?
yeah,
Really?
using that
On a phone?
On a phone,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I actually
weird.
use it, but I do use it for many of the other things that you mentioned too.
So we need to come up with a new name, okay? So we need to come up with a new name, like smartphone. Like, this is not a phone, okay? We gotta come up with a new name.
I got two.
You do? Okay.
Okay. The first one, PDA. I think it's a good name.
I like
Nice
that.
ring
Personal
to it.
Digital Assistant. It's a nice name. It's ready for a comeback, and it's a better PDA than they used to be back when they called them PDAs. Next one. What's
Right.
the next one?
The second one is the It's a MMDD, multimedia digital device.
I don't like that one. I'm going back to PDA for that one.
Okay.
All right.
At least you can.
All right.
All right, so tell us now, why is it?
Right, the end of the world.
Why is it the end of the world?
Okay, it's the end of the world because the big news story that happened this month is that Microsoft. You remember last month or 2 months ago or whatever? We've had a couple of stories. Like 3 months ago, we had a story that Microsoft was now using Linux in its Azure cloud. Okay, they had custom-made switches and so forth with a kernel, with a Linux distribution that they rolled themselves, for their own environment there, and they had full support for Linux in their Azure cloud and actually use Linux switches to move the information. It's like, oh wow, holy cow, Microsoft is doing this. And then last month, we talked about the idea that Microsoft had released SQL Server, or a preview of SQL Server, of their the SQL Server product for Linux, and promising that the full-blown SQL Server version would be available by the end of the year. So this month, Microsoft announces that they have a full-blown partnership with Ubuntu, with Canonical, the company that produces the Ubuntu Linux distribution, and Ubuntu will come pre-installed native on Windows 10.
Whoa!
So if you're running Windows, the old command line that existed in Windows is now going to be Ubuntu Linux. You're going to be using a Bash shell and full Linux command line environment as provided by Canonical to run under Windows. So, and again, this isn't like this isn't emulated in a shell. This isn't a virtualized environment. This is bloody native. It's actually going to be Linux is going to be part of Windows. Okay, now if you want to get it right now, you have to be a developer, because again, it's the early release and so forth. So you have to be part of their developer program and so forth. But this is like, it's actual Linux. It's an actual Linux distribution running natively in Windows. So it's the end of the world as we know it, because for the longest time, as you know, there's been like this, you remember Steve Ballmer calling Linux a cancer, that needed to be wiped out, and working close to.
And the Linux community has never forgotten since.
Yeah, well, no, they haven't forgotten since, but this is just bizarre. Now, I've got a quote here, which I realize that you've got. I'm going to read it. There's a quote from Mark Shuttleworth, who's the guy behind Canonical and Ubuntu. He wrote, "The native availability of a full Ubuntu environment on Windows without virtualization or emulation is a milestone that defies convention." Boy, that's an understatement. "And a gateway to fascinatingly unfamiliar territory. In our journey to bring free software to the widest possible audience, this is not a moment we could have predicted. Nevertheless, we're delighted to stand behind Ubuntu for Windows, committed to addressing the needs of Windows developers exploring Linux in this amazing new way, and excited at the possibilities heralded by this unexpected turn of events." Like, that's an understatement after one understatement after another understatement. It's kind of, like I said, it's like the end of the world. It's like, who'd have thought all those years ago, when Microsoft had decided that Linux was a cancer and needed to be wiped off the face, and was funneling money into SCO to destroy Linux, that we'd be running Linux on Windows. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Now, for people, for developers, both Windows developers and Linux developers, this is like excellent news. It's great news, because it gives them more power as administrators and as developers than they've ever had before. And I was chatting with a buddy of mine who works, a passive journalist, but who works for Microsoft now, Jason Perlow, and I had joked about the idea that installing something sudo apt-get install, and Jason piped in on Twitter and said, in Windows you don't even have to type the sudo anymore, it's apt-get. And of course, I don't know why, but and I replied to him on Twitter this way, and I said, like, that just cracked me up. I was killing myself laughing at the idea that, I can just apt-get install a program on Microsoft Windows, install an Ubuntu program on Microsoft Windows. It's kind of mind-blowing. Now, I don't actually have a Windows 10 computer. I kind of want to get my hands on one and get a developer account so that I can actually, experience this for myself. But it's wow.
So, do you think this, Is Ubuntu going to be kind of a virtual machine kind of thing where you kind of open it up and then it's its own environment within Windows, or will you be able to kind of use all the commands that, let's say, someone who's familiar with Ubuntu can use all those commands that you're familiar with to actually control the Windows 10 environment?
The second version, it's native. It's not virtualized. It's not running inside a container. No, you are running it, as in fact it will be the Windows command line.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is. I mean, it's shifting that much that in the future versions of Windows, you're going to see the Linux command line, in this case the Ubuntu Linux version, because they're working with Canonical on this one. But that is what your command, what your command line environment is going to be in Windows. So if you're an old Windows hack, it won't be long before you're becoming familiar with working in a Linux command line environment. So.
I'll have to brush up on that because I have very very limited experience with Linux. Just a couple distributions here and there, but with Windows, I've been using that since '95. So and as I'm more familiar with one than the other, would you say that you kind of get more kind of more power? Not power overwhelming or anything like that, but just kind of more control over the operating system with the Linux command line? Is it a better replacement?
Oh, it's orders of magnitude better, and I'm not just talking about because I'm a Linux guy who obviously prefers working in that environment. But if you're a developer, if you're an administrator, and you wind up dropping down to the Windows command shell to do things, and I've done that. I mean, I obviously, as as a longtime open source and Linux guy, I make fun of Windows, but I have customers who run Windows, and I help them support their Windows systems as well. So I do work in that environment on a regular basis, but I don't enjoy it. Every time I need to do something in the command line, I feel like my hands are tied, like it's limited in what I can do. So this is a huge deal. I mean, it's a huge big deal. The tools that are available for an administrator, and I'm stressing that. I know I've used that word a few times now. For an administrator, for somebody who is actually doing some of the down and dirty work in the environment is a huge deal. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I mean, I can't come up with I cannot come up with a negative on this for people that are running in a Windows environment. I truly can't.
Well, it appears some of the articles have already done it for you.
Oh yeah, I know.
To find things, but let's say looking for, and I know we're like 2 minutes on the break, so we got to keep this kind of short. But going forward, because Windows 10 and the corporate environment hasn't exactly been flourishing yet. They're still they're finally upgrading to Windows 7, so Windows 10 is probably a little bit ways off. But do you think in Windows in the corporate world, do you think they are going to start looking for Linux users to kind of run their administration?
Well, they already are. They already are, because if you're an administrator working in a Windows data center, you're also working with Linux. I don't know of a lot of Windows administrators that aren't also Linux administrators these days, and the main reason for that is that most of the servers are actually Linux servers, despite the fact that Windows is sitting on the desktops in the corporate world. On the back end, they're running Linux servers. So that's what their mail server is. That's what their web servers are. That's what their that's what their file sharing systems are. That's what their backup systems are. Almost all of them are running Linux systems, and less Windows servers out there. I know they still exist, but it's a shrinking marketplace. There's a joke there. We'll look at it. The Linux world domination. The idea used to be Linux world domination. It's like, someday we will rule the desktop. This is the year of the Linux desktop. Well, it's been the year of the Linux desktop for 25 years, and we're still nowhere near the, unless of course you want to talk about Chromebooks. But on the back end, in the server, embedded Linux, your smart TVs, your thermostats, every other gizmo you can think of. Linux world domination has been a done deal for a few years. Linux rules the internet, runs the internet. So yeah, I think that the people who are working on the back end are going to love this, and they're going to love it because they can do everything in one environment instead of switching back and forth.
Perfect.
Okay, we got to take a little break, and we'll continue on. Marcel Gagné is here. It's our All Linux show, 347-884-8881. Another News Tips Bold review from Marty Winston coming up as well. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attack. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. Long before Vistaprint asked me to tell you about them, my wife and I have been using Vistaprint for years, making business cards, having the Computer America logo placed on the polo shirts we use at conventions like CES, even printing a business card for our personal lives with our home address and phone number. In fact, Vistaprint offers tons of custom products for home and office needs, and Vistaprint absolutely guarantees you'll love their products every time, or they will make it right. In fact, they'll give you 500 business cards for just $9.99 when you enter my promo code Craig at checkout. Just go to their website at www.vistaprint.com and see how easy it is to design your own stuff using their web-based custom design service. Remember to use my code Craig and save up to 50% over their regular pricing. So don't wait. Go to vistaprint.com and order today.
No, slide rules were not made for playgrounds.
Hi, I'm Marty Winston with the News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the Arctic Cove Mister. When it's hot out and you're committed to stay out, whether for work or for play, how much would it make your day to more or less turn a Home Depot bucket into an air conditioner? That's pretty much what an Arctic Cove 18-volt bucket-top misting fan can do. It can use a Ryobi 1 Plus or Arctic Cove 18-volt lithium battery to power a 2-speed fan and a 2-speed pump. The battery it comes with is rated for up to 3.5 hours per charge. The pump goes through 1.3 gallons per minute in low, 1.8 in high. The water can come either by dropping its filtered feed hose into that bucket of clean water or by connecting a second feed line to a garden hose. Bottom line, when the weather gets hot and you'd rather you're not, the Arctic Cove 18-volt bucket-top misting fan gives you cooling on demand. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 33 minutes past the hour, and we are here all show long with Marcel Gagné on our All Linux show, everything about Linux. And yeah, Marcel just dropped the bombshell on us that, of course, Ubuntu is coming to Windows 10. So yay for that. And, and I think we're just getting into some of the implications behind it, and of course we're about to get into some of the reactions from the Linux community because they seem very, very vocal, I guess.
You know, a couple of weeks before this story broke, a buddy of mine, Bruce Byfield, who I mentioned is that LibreOffice book on the last show, wrote an article called "Hating Microsoft," which was, you know, kind of a reflection on the history of, you know, Microsoft enmity with the open source community over the years, and it's kind of weird to see that happening. Also, on April 1st. Which was, you know, before the story got dropped, somebody posted a story that Microsoft had purchased Canonical, and
Wow.
and then shut down. shut down the company to basically get rid of Ubuntu Linux. Now, I think a few people, snorted their coffee or whatever at that point, or blew milk out of their nose, whatever. But the fact is, I mean, it's kind of virtually impossible to do anything to Linux nowadays. Things evolve, things change over time and so forth. But it's so firmly embedded in the infrastructure of the internet, of everything we do, so that the idea of actually getting rid of or negatively harming Linux in a big way is kind of virtually impossible. That went so far as to I posted one story which I thought was interesting. Somebody said, Microsoft embraces Linux way too late, and they made it sound like Windows is kind of irrelevant at this point, and it's like they're finally taking advantage of what Linux has to offer, but is it too late and so forth? And it's like there have been negative reactions, there have been positive reactions. As I said just before the break, I'm having trouble seeing a negative here. I have sort of maintained for years that a healthy information technology ecosystem has a lot of different technologies in it. It's not just Windows. I mean, you don't just have, a monopoly of Windows or a monopoly of, Apple, if that, could possibly have ever happened, or, even of Linux for that matter. And in the Linux world, because of the way the software exists, the fact that it's open source, that anybody can spin their own versions, can modify it in any way they can, it was, it was the champion that I wanted to get behind. All those years ago, because it made sense to me. It wasn't going to be this one thing, that ruled the world. There was always a possibility for, for new ideas and new products and new developments. And so, like I said, I can't see a negative to this, despite the fact that there's been some, fascinating reaction to this story.
Yeah, and like. This article, I'm sure the title is meant to get you to click it, just to
obviously.
read it.
Yeah, thanks.
I feel like a better one that, just, sense from you and the way that you're talking about other people's reactions, the title should read something like Microsoft embraces Linux, better late than never.
Yeah, I'd go with that as a title much quicker than I would with the other one. So I agree with you, Ben. I'm with you on that one. It's better late than never. We've come to accept a long time. The power users out there, the people that are working in universities, that are working in development, whether they're game developers, whether they're application developers of one form or another, it's pretty common to see people working in a Linux environment now and working on a Linux desktop, even if you don't see Linux desktops on the average corporate desktop or the average home desktop for that matter. It's always been that way. It's been that way for a long time. So yeah, better late than never.
Right. So the question is, with this move, for Ubuntu, kind of partnering up with Windows, are any of these users, because you mentioned a couple there, programmers, game developers, and so on and so forth, like they may use Linux because Linux is very, very compatible with what they have to do, but at the same time they have to kind of tailor everything to Windows, because a lot of people, even though it's Linux on the back end, to a lot of people it's Windows on the front end. So do you see any of these Linux users kind of saying, well, these are all the tools I need, I'm just going to develop in this? Or is it just strictly the command stuff and you can't really work as you did in Linux in the Windows 10 environment?
I don't know what the full implications of this is going to be, especially when it comes to graphical applications. I mean, some of the graphical applications obviously depend on some of the windowing libraries and so forth that exist in Linux. The fact that Jason Perlow was telling me that you could install programs using apt-get install, in other words, the command line installation, led me to wonder. And of course, I should have followed it up with a question. I didn't ask him that. I mean, he does work for Microsoft. I should have asked him. But it sort of begs the question: well, what sorts of things can you install? Can I install just about anything I want? And that opens up some fascinating questions again, and questions I don't have the answers to at the moment. For instance, development environments. There are full-blown development environments, obviously in the Windows world, for C, for C Sharp, and whatever other environments are available. And the same thing is true over in the Linux world. So what graphical application development tools are you going to use, if you have access to both sets, especially since one set is going to be free to use. In the Linux world, these are all free, and by free, I don't just mean open source. Obviously, we always talk about free as in speech, free as in beer, but definitely free as in beer. You don't have to pay for these development environments. Is that really what's going to happen to the developers? The thing to remember, as we watch all this, is also that Microsoft has been moving a lot of their business to the web anyway. Office 365, for instance,
Yeah.
right?
A lot of it's going there.
Yeah. So perhaps perhaps it matters less and less what's running on the desktop, and it's more a question of making sure that your web-based applications, that your software as a service, works easily across all environments. Maybe there's more of that than what's going to be running on the desktop.
And weeks ago, you would be considered pie in the sky thinking.
Oh, it would have been nuts. Like I said, it's like that's why I titled it "It's the End of the World as You Know It." It's just kind of bizarre. The implications, I think, are just starting to filter through, and I think it's going to be months before everybody really understands what this actually means. Like I said, I'd like to get my hands on a Windows 10 developer environment running Ubuntu. Maybe I can beg and say pretty please and see if I can get my hands on one. But I'd love to see for myself just what this actually means and just how far you can take this. This is obviously a fairly new story. This just.
So did I hear correctly? Marcel Gagné is going to actually be running Windows on this computer.
Well, Marcel is going to be testing.
Marcel Gagné tests the newest distribution, Windows 10.
A little later we're going to walk into Marcel's latest distribution foray. So I've got a few landmines that I need to walk across anyway. So.
Right.
I'm very curious. I am exceedingly curious. And I definitely want to check this out for myself. So there's no question that I want to have a look at this.
Let me ask you in all fairness.
Yes!
Did you ever think the day would come where you would see something like this?
Seemed highly unlikely. How's that?
Yeah.
It really did. My belief, and I think I've voiced this on the show before, was that we were moving to a primarily a web-based world, where the operating system that we run on our desktops is primarily. I'm sitting here tilting my Chromebook. But the environment is primarily meant as a means for us to get on the internet and use the tools that are out there in the cloud, whether it's the Office suite, whether you're somebody who uses Office 365 or whether you're somebody who uses the Google suite of documents. Your email is in the cloud, your data storage is in the cloud, your graphical applications are in the cloud, your photos are in the cloud. Instant messaging applications, everything is online. I mean, we live online. So the operating system, to me, has been increasingly the means by which you get online anyway. And online is whatever it is that's back there, and it tends to be Linux, but most people don't know that.
So all right. So that's the big news. And did you mention the April 1st thing?
Yeah, I did mention the April 1st thing. The Microsoft buys Canonical and shuts it down, but that was before the big story dropped. So that was actually before it dropped. So I don't know. Maybe there's some weird irony, in that being the April 1st story, and then what came, a few days later. So it's Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but yeah, I've got a big desktop. My 17-inch notebook here is actually a full-blown Linux desktop, and I use it to do the the hard day-to-day work and to have access to the tools that need to do an awful lot of grinding. But I also have the Chromebook that I'm using. The Chromebook is the one that I'm using to do the show right now that I'm communicating with you on, and that runs Linux, but it's really just it's a web browser. I mean, everything in it is everything that's behind it. The entire Linux environment behind it is there to effectively run the Chrome browser. So,
all right. So now, what about we talk about Linus Torvald?
yes, Linus did an interview just recently, and I mentioned that this August 25th is going to be the 25th year since Linux was officially released. Which, and this makes it easy for me because oddly enough, it turns out that I got married on the day that Linux was released. So,
Marcel Gagné is totally into Linux. I mean, he's basing.
I didn't know that when I got married. How was I to know?
Okay.
But to the day, it's on the same day. I got married on the same day that famous email went out from Linus Torvalds. So 25 years later, so this is like the 25th year of Linux. Talk about your computing success stories, but he did an interview where he was talking about what he does, what he's going to do. Linus doesn't do an awful lot of interviews these days, so this was one of those things that people were sort of paying attention to, and he was asked probably jokingly whether he'd given up hope of Linux winning on the desktop, of Linux world domination specifically on the desktop. And he said, no, it's not a done deal. He's been at this for 25 years. He figures he can wear him down with another 25 years, and eventually Linux will be the desktop operating system. So we'll see.
All right.
Another 25 years. What can you say?
Yeah.
Want to move on to some other funny news?
Yeah. So what is it? Let's talk about some funny. A man deletes his entire company with one line of bad code.
Okay, as you know, there are tools for administrators to basically script something into one system and have the tool go out and run the same thing on all your other systems. So that you don't have to log. Let's say that you're administering, I don't know, 50 or 60 servers, and you don't want to actually log into every one of those 50 or 60 servers, especially if there's say a mission critical patch or something that you need to apply. It'd be nice if you have an environment where you say apply mission critical patch, push the button, and it goes out and does them all for you. That would be nice. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a tool like that?
Yes, it would be.
Right. Yes, it would be. Yes. Well, it turns out there are lots of tools like that. And this guy posted on a forum. I was using this environment where you can do this, enter this line, and I didn't realize that I was entering it, on all my systems, and I basically went out and I deleted every server in the company, including all the backups of all the servers in the company, including all the websites of all our customers, effectively taking supposedly 1,500 customers offline and essentially deleting his entire company. And can anyone offer me any hope? And of course there were things like, geez, I'm really sorry, dude. That is just awful. And of course the classic line is rm space -rf space /, which basically says delete everything from the top of your root directory all the way on down. Now, this story was really funny. It went sort of viral. A lot of people talked about it. A lot of people shared it.
I don't think this guy thought it was funny, though. The guy.
No, I suspect he didn't think it was funny, but it sounds a little fishy. When I shared it myself, I posted, this is actually pretty hard to do, as it turns out. There was a time when it was a joke in the rm space -rf space *.* or just plain old star, delete everything and you've destroyed a system. And in fact, I personally know people who did that. Okay, I'd like to say for the record that I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them, but I know people that have done it. I know people that have done it, and I know just how incredibly bad and awful this was, and thank goodness for backups, and especially if you made sure that you actually had backups that you could restore from. Anyway, but this has become pretty hard to do, and in fact, most systems will block you from doing that beforehand. It's like, are you really sure that you want to do this, buddy? Because would be like a really bad thing. So it's actually pretty hard. It's actually pretty hard to do. I'm not actually gonna put it to the test and try it over here at the moment. Maybe I'll do it in a container somewhere. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do. There are safeguards and checks that try to prevent you from doing something that stupid. So there's something about the story that didn't ring 100% true, and I'm not sure how. I'm still not 100% sure, but rumor has it now that the person said that it was a hoax.
That sounds more likely. It sounds like someone who is savvy enough and like knows like the joke implication behind it, and just kind of
and was able to spin it in a way that it sounded believable. He actually mentioned the tool, the administration tool that would allow that to happen.
Well, why would he even think that's funny?
It is funny.
Why is a pie in the face funny? Why is somebody slipping on a banana peel and getting a concussion funny?
That's a disaster thing, I don't know.
I think we like to. I mean, as human beings, I mean, there's still a part of us that is the reptilian hindbrain there that is always looking out for the thing that's going to bite you on the bum and possibly take your life, and you're always looking for it. And because of that, mammals have evolved to play fight. I mean, you watch kittens and you watch kids, rolling around on the floor. What they're doing is they're practicing for the day when they're going to have to go tooth and claw against a predator that's going to kill them. The thing is, we don't have an awful lot of predators coming after us anymore. It doesn't happen much, but we still envision disaster scenarios all the time, which is why we like horror movies and stuff like that, which is why we're fascinated with stories of terrible things happening here and there and so forth. And of course, if you can bring it a little closer to home, in other words, make it something that you can envision happening, like slipping on a banana peel or having a pie thrown in your face or something like that, it's a minor disaster, and you can laugh about it because it's not happening to you.
Although it did remind me of a webcomic, and Marcel, I'm sure you've heard of it, XKCD.
I love XKCD. XKCD people. XKCD is wonderful.
And really, if you've read XKCD enough, like everything is going to remind you of a comic because they have so many comics out there. But this story reminded me of this one called Exploits of Mom, and 4 panels. Hi, this is your son's school. We're having some computer problems. Oh dear, did he break something? In a way, did you really name your son Robert apostrophe N parenthesis semicolon drop table students? It's like, oh yes, little Bobby tables. That's what we call them. He said, well, we've lost this year's student record, so thanks for that. And she says, and I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs. It reminded me of that one. It's you can get in a lot of trouble with just a little string.
If there are people out there listening who are not following XKCD, shame on you. Shame on you. It's like one of the most brilliant pieces. In fact, I should have posted this one as well. I should have included this one. XKCD did a story once. He the brains behind XKCD just put out a book, Thing Explainer, in which he uses something like 1,000 most common words in the English language, so that nothing is complicated. Everything, including rocket science and genetics and whatever, is explained in the simplest possible terms. And some joker out there decided, wouldn't it be fascinating to create a word processor that doesn't allow you to type any of the words that aren't in that list of 1,000 most common words?
Someone did that?
Someone did that. I wanted to install it and test it out, but that joker only made it available for Mac. Yeah.
Well, if it's going to be hard to use, that's where you put it.
Yeah, he put.
Oh yeah.
No, but the idea is that, and then of course the joke started to follow. It's like it's the word processor that Donald Trump uses for his speeches, because he doesn't use any words, any big words at all. It's like he doesn't have access to anything that's particularly complicated. If it has more than 7 or 8 letters, he just
Let's see. Let's go to the board
passes
here.
right by it. The Trump speech thing. It's really kind of funny. In fact, let me just have a quick look. Did I post that something? I created a word processor and destroyed humanity, or something like this. I should look at it. It's somewhere around here. I posted it somewhere. It is pretty funny though. This the idea behind that. It's like, what if you had a word processor where you couldn't use any complex words at all? Everything had to be, in this list of the 1,000 most common words in the English language.
All
And
you'd
of
have
course,
to do is ask my fourth grader me, and he would have shown you how to do that, because he did not
Yeah, but
use complicated words.
would you have created the word processor to make that possible?
No, but he would have not needed it. He would have just done the simple words anyways. I was a lazy kid.
Yeah,
Not
I
a
kind
lazy
of was
person,
too.
but lazy kid.
I every once in a while I have to go to the school and point out to my teacher, my kid's teacher, stuff like, well, homework, like, the idea of homework. It's like, you want to make sure that your kid does his homework. It's like, why? I never did any homework. I'm a terrible parent. I didn't believe, I didn't believe in homework when I was a kid. I don't believe in homework as an adult.
There are, and of course, tangent, but there are new schools of thought. I'm going to say that, and new ways of teaching school, that teachers are actually going home and kind of telling kids to go watch a lecture that's pre-recorded online. Kind of like their homework is to listen to the lecture, and then their schoolwork when they get into school is to do their homework. So it's kind of flipping it, kind of backwards, so you can kind of do the work in class where you have help and a teacher and essentially a tutor, and you kind of just listen and try to understand at home. So
Does that work?
they said it works, and it's very, very well when when the student is motivated. It works very well. But if your student is not motivated, then it's gonna suck.
Okay.
I do. Okay, don't get me started. I kind of have trouble with the whole homework thing. I do. I mean, if you're doing just, if you're having trouble and you need to do some extra work to catch up, then yeah. But if you're mostly getting it, then what's the point? Especially in the lower grades. It's like in elementary school. It's like, really, what does that grade 2 kid need to do any homework for? Seriously.
True.
Anyways, you're gonna get hate mail for this.
We'll
One of your guests says that homework is a crock.
We'll throw it in there with the rest. But getting back to Linux, so gentleman deletes his entire company with one line of code.
Yeah, with one Linux command. Okay, so I'm actually, I just posted the link, by the way, to this word processor. It's actually available on GitHub. Clear text, Mac blob. So Craig, who's like the only person we know who actually runs a Mac, can download it and try it out.
So whenever you type in a very common used word, it's gonna kind of underscore it in red and then delete it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that you're not allowed to type those words, and the idea is to try to force you into speaking, plainly and easily, without getting too flowery and bizarre and so forth.
Yeah, I'm watching it. They actually have an example of it. It's actually doing.
Yeah, the Donald Trump word processor.
Well, listen, we're coming up to the top of the hour break. And,
okay.
We're going to move on to the next story, which is SEO. Basically, we've lost the final appeal, and the case is closed for good. Well, evidently, they're back. It's back. We'll talk about that story, and also we're going to talk about Neon as well. And then we'll go into our distribution focus.
Yes.
Okay. And also Linux Playtime and Big Business Linux. And words. All that coming up in the next hour of the Computer America show. Let me just take a moment to remind everybody that tomorrow is our Social Media Winner of the Week contest, where we draw a winning name to win a really nice price from Logitech, and that right now it is the M535 Bluetooth mouse that works with Windows, Mac, anything that has it has Bluetooth. It works with Chrome OS, Android. It works with everything, and we're going to be giving that away. It's valued at $40, and we're going to give away one of those tomorrow's show. But you can't win it unless you enter. Just head over to ComputerAmerica.com, get your entry in now. Okay, we got another hour of the Computer America show coming at you with Marcel Gagné, our Linux expert. 347-884-8881 is the number to call. We'll get you on and get you through. We're going to be right back just in a moment. Back in a flash. You're listening to the Computer America show.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And I'm the other guy.
Yeah, we keep putting up with the antics of Marcel Gagné, our Linux correspondent, just a real fun guy, and we are just talking about all these stories. Everything for the man deleting his entire company with one line of bad code, and of course the end of the world as we know it. All these stories, again, you can see them. Just go to ComputerAmerica.com. We have a link to the show notes. The link is there. You can download it and check them out for yourself. But we continue on in this next hour with Marcel, and the next story we're going to be talking about is the SEO.
And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this one.
Okay.
I posted it because last month I told you about a story that, and now SCO, you got to remember, SCO is the company that once upon a time SCO was actually a player in the in Linux world.
Mm-hmm.
They were one of the good guys. In fact, I have in the basement, I keep it. I have a boxed SCO Linux distribution. I have a set of golf balls and tees, that SCO was handing out to show off, at a Linux conference to show off their, their good guyness in the Linux world. So, and then all of a sudden one day it's like, they sue. They sue Red Hat and IBM and this, and start talking about suing everybody who's running Linux because they supposedly own it because they bought Novell. Who had the rights to, who bought the rights to the name Unix, and then essentially basically became a patent troll. Trying to live off, the idea that anything good that came out of the Linux world was obviously theirs, and they, it's probably a good thing that it never got anywhere because, of course, as we know, Linux kind of rules the world now, and it would be kind of bad for a patent troll to rule the world. Anyway, but I digress. So SCO last month, it was. It's like, this is the final, this is the end, the very last appeal has been heard in front of a judge, and there's absolutely no way that SCO will ever rise again, that there will never be another SCO news story. And all of a sudden there's another story that says that SCO is launching yet another appeal. So maybe this is the story that will never die. It's like zombie.
I guess the owners realize that or at least I guess they're hoping that it's the goose that lays the golden egg, and I guess to stop laying golden eggs, and they keep whacking it. They're like, come on.
Yeah, but they've spent millions on this at this point. It's like, at some point, you just, and there isn't a judge anywhere that has given them the time of day since the long-running, court battle that happened a few years back there. It's just kind of amazing that it keeps coming back. Anyway, so just you know, there it is. Let's go. Apparently, it'll never die. Not completely, anyway. All right. So next thing. There's a story here. This is actually a feed in to the distribution focus for this month. And once upon a time, there was there still is. There was a distribution called Ubuntu, and Ubuntu spawned a lot of other Ubuntus, as I like to call them, star Ubuntus. Star, get it? The asterisks, star Ubuntus. So there's Zubuntu and Lubuntu and Kubuntu and then of course we had some of the fun ones that we've covered here on the show, like Satanic Linux and stuff like that, which was all based on Ubuntu. So there are a lot of distributions based on Ubuntu. But there was a falling out between one of the head members of Kubuntu and Canonical. And it was pretty public, and if you want, you can go back and take a look at it. I won't rehash it here, but he went off and started he didn't start it because Neon was the development branch of KDE Plasma anyway, but decided to formalize it into a distribution based on Kubuntu that had the latest bleeding edge, and I do mean bleeding edge version of the KDE desktop. And that's where that went. So there's a story there about, if you wanted to do that. Now, I link to that story as I link to any story that I think is interesting in the Linux world. For the people out there who I'll mention it here, flipboard.com. I am WFTL or Wooftle on Flipboard.com. I'm Wooftle in a lot of places, but on my Flipboard magazine, I know you've got a link to it there, and it's linked in the show notes as well. But you can read the story there about how you can have the latest and greatest version even if you're running stock Kubuntu. Well, as it turns out, somebody's actually has made available those packages so that you can install them. And in fact, I am actually running it on my other desktop, Chromebook here, and Kubuntu desktop over there. And I loaded the beta version. We're almost at the point, it's like days away, maybe hours away. I'm not sure exactly, but 16.04, the latest version of Ubuntu is coming out. Xenial Xerxes is coming out, and of course all the other Ubuntu versions will follow suit, Kubuntu being the one that follows most closely. But what I did was I actually installed the latest version of the KDE Plasma environment called Neon. So if anybody wants to take a look at it and would be interested, who is running Kubuntu and would like to take a look at that, this is how you run the bleeding edge, without having to sit there and compile all the code yourself. Which, by the way, you can still do, but I don't really recommend it. Unless you're a developer, I don't recommend that you do that. You will drive yourself completely bananas.
All right.
So yes, so that's definitely the case. Now, the reason this becomes the distribution focus is that, as you know, I have commitment issues. Not in my marriage, as you know. I've been married 25 years. Coming this August, so that's not the issue. But when it comes to running an operating system on my desktop, I have commitment issues.
You always do something different. But you know what? That's what keeps it interesting. Is it keeps things,
Well, I try a lot of different distributions, but I also like to, but I also switch out my my environment. And I don't know how many Linux people do this. Open source types do this. But I find myself, hey, this looks really interesting, and I run it for a while, and I like it, and it's all cool. And then for some strange reason, one day it's like, I've been doing this for a while now. It's time to move on to something else. And for what it's worth, I ran Fedora 23 for like 2.5, 3 months. No?
That's pretty good.
That's not bad. Yeah. That's not bad. And I liked it. I did like it.
But going back to something that you liked,
for me, it's mostly the desktop environment. I mean, I tend to work inside KDE, although I do run. I run Mate every once in a while. I run the Cinnamon desktop. I've run LXDE. I've run I move back and forth between a lot of different environments. And as you know, as we talked on the show here, I loaded up one of the notebooks here in the house that my kids play with last month. I'm drawing a blank, but it's a Chrome OS distribution. It's basically a distribution that mimics Chrome OS. Which I've got here on the desktop because the kids use Chromebooks at school, so it's familiar to them. Anyway, but yeah, I do tend to move back and forth between a lot of different distributions, and I know that 1604 is coming out, and I was going to be doing some work for one of my clients where I have to migrate their environment over to 1604, which is one of the long-term releases. Meaning that it gets more long-term support from Canonical. So I have to migrate their environment anyway, and I thought, hey, what the heck? Maybe I'll migrate my own desktop, especially since I read this article that talked about how to run Neon, how to get the Neon packages, and that sort of pushed me over the edge. So I erased Fedora. I said goodbye to Fedora 23, and I installed Kubuntu 1604, which, as I mentioned, is still in beta, but will be official within hours or days. And then went ahead and loaded the packages for KDE Neon, which lets me run the bleeding edge version of KDE Plasma.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So of course, this would beg the question: A, why would you do such a crazy thing all the time? And does this not dramatically negatively impact your work? And the answer...
I would assume productivity would take a hit if you have to kind of relearn everything.
Well, except that you don't relearn everything. I mean, we're kind of at the point where changes are incremental. So for the most part, things are as they were before. They tend to get a little bit smoother. They tend to... Go ahead, Craig.
Well, I mean, is it like, when you go to a new version of Windows, the control panels used to be over here, and now they've moved them over there, or they've changed it.
My goodness. I have heard horror stories from IT people who upgrade people's computers from Windows, from Windows 2000, from Windows XP to Windows 7, and, any reasonable person who's used these two operating systems would say they are spiritual successors of themselves, and everything is essentially in the same place. Just a few things are in different places, and as soon as people do that, they flip out. Like they can't. Incremental changes is just not possible for these people.
It's hard. I mean, it's if you work in computers, if you work with computers on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of par for the course, especially if you work as an administrator working on a lot of different systems, because you kind of have to move from system to system without. But truth be told, I mean, while I'm installing a different desktop, there are a few things that and I don't just mean a different desktop. I mean a whole different Linux environment. I'm not just booting into, like I said, I run KDE, I run Unity, I've run I've run Cinnamon, I've run Mate. It's not just booting into a different desktop environment. This is like wiping out the Linux distribution that was there before and reloading it with a completely different version. And yeah, go ahead.
I could see some IT guy hearing what you do and going, is he crazy? I mean, I have to do this, and he's doing this to himself intentionally.
Yeah. Intentionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Intentionally, and occasionally writing about it. But yeah, no. I like to think that it keeps me flexible, for one thing.
Flexible. Okay.
keeps my OS admin skills flexible, even though I do work on other systems anyway. But for me, it's like I like the idea of actually working in the environment regularly, and for me to actually run the Neon stuff without having to compile it. So in a way, I was actually trying to save time, believe it or not. But of course, if you're going to blow away a whole system, then you've got several things that you need to worry about. Now, my son a few days ago, and here comes the magic word, backups. Okay, my son a few days ago, as I mentioned, they run off the Chromebook. They either run off their Chromebook or they run off the one that I converted to a Chromebook. But it's relatively easy to just wipe the whole thing out and start over again. Now, when you wipe out your Chromebook and start all over again, you're essentially just logging back into Google, right? And everything is still there because everything is essentially in the cloud. So it wasn't that big a deal, other than the fact that I had to log him back in. But if you're doing it with your own desktop and you actually have a lot of files on your desktop, like you've got photographs, you've got video files, you've got code that you're developing, keys that you use to access remote systems, that sort of stuff. It can be rather problematic, and for somebody out there who might want to try something like this, and I often suggest that you go out and you get yourself a Linux distribution, you boot off the CD and you try it. But if you want to try that, the key is partitioning your disk. Okay? Pretty much your entire user environment lives in something called /home. Okay, I mean, so you've got all your file names on the disk. You've got /, which is the root, which is where the person who supposedly deleted their entire system, rm space -rf/, you delete absolutely everything on the system. But / or root is the top of the disk, or if for the people who came from the Windows world, C:\\.
Right.
It's the top. It's everything else flows from underneath in kind of a hierarchical tree of files and folders, right?
Got it.
Okay, so if you partition the disk in such a way that /home is in a separate partition, and you keep the rest of it, so /home mounts under root, under /, but you make that a completely separate partition, then if you're careful, it is possible to completely erase the root partition. Okay, because it's a separate partition when you're installing, right? To completely erase it and leave all of your data intact. Okay? I've done this countless times. It sounds insane, but I've done this countless times. And for the most part, okay? For the most part, it's safe-ish, okay? You're going to run into things. You're going to run into things like, oh, damn, I had installed this program and it's not, I'd installed this package and it's not there, so I have to go back out and reinstall it. So yes, that's a bit of a pain. But most Linux distributions come with all your packages, like your Office packages installed, your browser is installed. You do need to go out and get some things. So yes, that's always a bit of a pain. But your data is the most important thing.
I don't know. As an outside observer listening to what you're going through, aren't you making a lot of work for yourself that you would not have to normally do by doing this? Unless you find this entertaining. I mean, okay. I mean, I like the stability of knowing that everything's going to be where I left it last time I turned my computer on, and I'm not doing anything intentionally to put that in harm's way. But
sometimes I don't know. I feel like we've lost the adventurous spirit.
Adventure. Okay.
Listen. I mean, we go back far enough, you and I, Craig, that we remember the days where you actually had to write batch files and stuff like that. If you want, you wrote your own damn menus.
Yes.
For goodness sakes, it's like, hey, I wrote a menu, so that I could easily access my programs instead of having to type them all the time. I mean. That's we go back far enough to do that, and computers in the early days, the world runs on computers and we run computers. Well, in the early days, it was a hobby, okay. And I'd like to think that a lot of people who listen to the show, especially people who are Linux curious or curious about open source, still that have that hobbyist spirit.
Okay. All right.
I want to try things. I want to see how these things work. I want to do things that might be a little bit dangerous. Okay. Might be a little bit dangerous, I suppose. But I'm being careful. I make sure that my stuff is backed up just in case.
Yeah. And we can't delete it all with that one line of bad code. Okay.
Well, you can sort of, kind of, a bit, maybe. You can certainly delete your home directory that way. So your home folder that way. It doesn't it doesn't have the protections that the main system has. In fact, if you are doing it as root, you do a sudo rm-rf, you have no hope. It's just going to happen anyway. Um, but but I'd like to think that the people who are curious about these things are hobbyists. They actually want to do some of these things, and they don't want to completely destroy everything that they're doing. They don't want to ruin their entire lives for several days or whatever. But they're willing to risk a few hours of their lives to try something different.
Okay.
Try something new.
The way you said Linux curious made it almost sound like a sexual identity, where it's like, be Linux curious, find out the true meaning of free and open source, and then cheesy music starts to play. Like it's starting to sound a little bit like that, but expand your horizons, I think, is what you're saying.
we need to have a whole other show on that very topic alone.
Oh, the pun work would be amazing.
Oh man, it's there's nothing wrong with being curious about technology. In fact, on the last show I talked about an initiative here in Kitchener-Waterloo, the Year of Code, where the idea was to reach out to as many people in the community and give them a base, an understanding of what coding is all about, what computer technology is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about I've got a desktop and I'm doing work and I'm surfing the web. I mean, if that's all it is, then you don't need Windows, you don't need Linux, you don't need a Mac, you just need a web browser to access the internet. For God's sakes, just get a Chromebook and get it over with. You don't. Yeah, seriously, you don't need anything else. I mean, if all you're doing is stuff that's online, you don't need anything else. But you've got this machine sitting beside you that's got more power than the entire world had. Just hey, let's go back 25 years. The entire world had 25 years ago. You've got that. Heck, you've got that on your freaking phone.
Yeah. Really?
So I think it's worthwhile for us to encourage people to experiment, to try things.
Well, I think it's an interesting insight into the mindset of someone who who wants to do something like this, and certainly have at it. I mean, it's like anything else, if you find something of interest, and yes, there's a little danger involved, but you want to do it and to see what it's like and what happens, and you learn from it. That's great, as long as you understand that there are some hazards in mind, or at least if you have everything, make backups independently of what you're doing. So
do you think most Linux people have a play machine and a work machine?
I think it's possible. I mean, most, like the notebook that I've got here sitting beside me has got what? It's got, what does it say? It's got a 600 gig drive. It's not the biggest that you can get these days, but it's got a 600 gig drive in it, and that's it's a fair chunk of space, right? I mean, Chromebooks have got 16 gig, so 600 gig is a fair chunk of space. So I've got a lot of files, and in that amount, I think I've got a grand total of it looks like about let's do the math real quick here. I've got about 50 gig free. That's it, of the 600 gigs. It's about 50 gig free. So I've got a lot of stuff there that I don't want to lose, and I sure as heck don't want to restore it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, despite the fact that I've got a NAS in the basement, I've got a couple of NASs, but, and I back up my system on a regular basis, I don't actually want to restore it, ever. I don't want to have to go through that pain and suffering. So the data is something that I like to keep as much as possible. Even if I could restore it, I'd like to just keep it that way.
Let me ask you.
This makes it possible. Go ahead.
And all the tinkering that you like to do, and I'm using the word tinkering, how many times have you found yourself in a position where you have to do that, which you didn't want? I mean, where you obliterated everything, and you're just sitting there, okay, I guess
only when he installed that version of Nuke Linux, and all it did was just destroy everything.
I'm going to say rarely. In fact, the only time that I find that actually has to happen is when I'm buying a new notebook. Okay, it's coming to the end of its life. I've had it for a while. It's time to replace the hardware. it's starting to get flaky and I want to replace it. And at that point, yes, I do have to restore all the data. And at that point, really all I do is, hopefully if the other notebook is still alive, that it hasn't crashed, I can just do a copy across the network. And and it's again, it's relatively easy to do that. It's happened. I mean, I won't lie, it has happened, but just not very often.
Okay. Well.
So it's not generally that big a deal.
And it sounds to me like that isn't. It has never been a big deal. It hasn't. You have never found yourself in the position of this guy who deleted his business. You can quickly restore everything to the way it was. Within a reasonable amount of time, if and when you have to do that. So.
Well, and nowadays all my mail is online. I mean, I can access all my mail online. I have a huge amount of storage on Google Drive and on Dropbox, and anything that I consider important enough that I may need to access it readily is over on Google Drive and on on Dropbox. Although I have to admit, and again, I really hope that Google isn't evil, I use Google Drive more these days than I use Dropbox. A couple of years, even a year ago for that matter, it would have been completely opposite. Dropbox was my go-to; it was the primary, but now it is actually Google Drive. So
you would recommend this only to people who kind of know what they're doing. You're not going to suggest this to people who are just coming into Linux for the first time or the second time or something and say, okay, well now go ahead and start playing with it. You want to have some sort of foundation before you really start tinkering, I guess.
Yeah, you want to have some foundation, but if you're coming at, I mean, if you're really, really just tinkering, if you're really just putting your foot in the water, you do what I've suggested countless times on the show. You download a bootable Linux disk, you boot out, or you burn it to a USB drive if you don't have a CD, or a DVD these days. But you just that way there's nothing to lose. In fact, if you're running Windows, you can just boot up off the drive, and you're not even going to lose what's on your computer. You just run entirely off the DVD, right?
Right.
So if you're really curious and you just want to muck about and you don't want to lose anything at all, that's the way to do it. But if you are going to install a system with the idea that you want to get into, you want to be, you want to play the hobbyist, you want to try things, you want to muck about, you want to experiment. If that's what you're actually going to do, then you partition your drive right off the bat. The first time you install it, every time, if you're going to install a distribution, it's going to give you two options. Well, it's going to give you multiple options, but it's going to give you one option, which is this. I can wipe out your entire drive, install everything in one partition, and it's quick, it's easy, there's nothing to think about. I'll take over as much of the drive as you tell me to take over, and away we go. Okay? That's a dangerous scenario if you want to play about in the way that I'm suggesting later.
Right.
Okay? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to go into the partitioning tool that prepares your disk, that formats your disk so you can install Linux, and you're going to say, I want at least two partitions. One of them is going to be /data. It's going to be where all my users, or if it's just you yourself, where my stuff lives. /data. It's a separate partition. It's the bulk of my disk. Okay, and then I'm going to have a slightly smaller partition. Nowadays, small can be pretty big, given that we've got all these large disks. But I'm going to have a slightly smaller partition, which is going to be where the operating system lives. And then if I want to fart around, if I want to upgrade, if I want to do something else, my data is protected. Short of the day when I have, a catastrophic disk crash, I'm not going to lose anything by having done it that way.
Okay. All right.
So it's safe, and it does allow you to play with this stuff. And come on, people, computers are fun. You can do stuff, experiment.
You call it distribution roulette. You spin the chamber.
It's not that bad.
Not that bad. All right.
It's not, and it's fun to see. Honestly, seriously. I mean, if you've got that adventurous spirit, it's fun to see where people are going with this stuff. What the bleeding edge, implies blood, but to find out what people are actually developing, what they're working with, where the technology is going, is actually kind of exciting. It's not just fun; it's kind of exciting. It's like it's like you're part of it. You're part of the future before it actually gets here.
There it is. Okay. All right. Well, now I want to talk a little bit about the Raspberry Pi because I know you're a huge ad, uh, um, supporter of that, and evidently something called Ubuntu Mate for the Raspberry Pi has come out. I guess this is the final thing on the distribution list. Let's talk a little about distribution focus.
Yeah, I mentioned Mate.
Real quick, we only have about a minute
No.
left, so I don't want to keep going and then run headlong into that.
Yeah, you can start with it.
The keeper of the time. Well, I'll start into it. As you know, I was playing last month with the idea of I told you this. I was playing with the idea of giving my parents just a Raspberry Pi with a desktop environment on it, and of course, as luck would have it, that meant that I had to start playing with different versions of Linux running on the Raspberry Pi. So we'll wait until we'll come back, but we'll talk about what it takes to install it on the Raspberry Pi. It's not particularly complicated, and the different options that are out there, and of course Ubuntu Mate, because that's what I settled on.
And then also we'll have our Linux playtime.
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that, and maybe a little big business.
I don't know why, but we always miss the business stuff.
I know, but hey, we got to take a break. This is the Computer America Show. Marcel Gagné continues with us. It's just a lot of fun, all about Linux. We've got a news discipline review coming up as well. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. Long before Vistaprint asked me to tell you about them, my wife and I have been using Vistaprint for years, making business cards, having the Computer America logo placed on the polo shirts we use at conventions like CES, even printing a business card for our personal lives with our home address and phone number. In fact, Vistaprint offers tons of custom products for home and office needs, and Vistaprint absolutely guarantees you'll love their products every time, or they will make it right. In fact, they'll give you 500 business cards for just $9.99 when you enter my promo code Craig at checkout. Just go to their website at www.vistaprint.com and see how easy it is to design your own stuff using their web-based custom design service. Remember to use my code Craig and save up to 50% over their regular pricing. So don't wait. Go to vistaprint.com and order today. Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering, or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf's staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets and to help their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home.
Who's a good boy?
No, Ratatouille is not made with rat. Get that thing out of here.
Marty Winston with the News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the 8-Ear Pro Cube 3D. Cube 3D is, on the level, a self-leveling triple laser level that comes with a tripod. The big switch also mechanically releases the hanging laser emitter rig from being pressed against a lower ring inside, so gravity brings the lasers within 3 degrees of plumb. Until that happens, the laser lines flash and the little box beeps. A push button on the side selects between crossed lasers, horizontal and vertical lines up front, a single vertical laser line out the side, or both. It's all powered by a trio of AAA cells and comes with separate cases for both the unit and the tripod. Bottom line, the 8-Ear Pro Cube 3D self-leveling triple laser level is plumb clever. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show, and again, thank you, Marty Winston, for those News Tip Bulletin reviews. You'll be hearing that one just a few more times, and then it will be, only in the past, and we'll get 2 new ones. I think he sends them in batches of 383s, to Craig. So the
Great.
point is we have a lot of them. So yeah, but right now we are sadly, this show has flown by the last half hour of our all Linux show and everything about Linux and Linux oriented. So yeah, and we are talking about different distributions after we just covered the news, and after this whole Ubuntu thing, now we are just moving into the Ubuntu Mate for the Raspberry Pi. So please, Marcel, continue.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should point out that especially since I was just talking about the bleeding edge, that this isn't going to be the bleeding edge. All right, this is it's an older version, which means it actually does take less space and does require less demand on the system, and the versions that are available for the Raspberry Pi that you can download for the Raspberry Pi are actually not quite to the same extent. So like I said, I was looking for a computer, and I reasoned that my parents really just were surfing the web. I mean, that's really all they were doing. So I thought, hey, why not set them up with a Raspberry Pi? Because I'd been playing with one, and I thought I would. Now, I'd been playing with one not as a desktop operating system, so this was actually an interesting experiment because I had decided that I would actually set it up as a desktop to try to see what that was like. Now, the one that I gave you a link to, I gave you a link to one that I actually wound up setting up the Mate. You've got the there you go. You got the link there on the page. Anyway, I wound up setting up that one, which is kind of there's a lot of weird information about how to set up Linux, or for that matter anything on the Raspberry Pi, but the easiest thing to do is to actually, and yeah, there's some great links on that page there. The easiest thing to do is actually to you format your micro SD card, and then you get a distribution like that. That's essentially you're basically copying the image onto the micro SD card, and there's some nice instructions for how to do that. But you're copying the image, and if you're doing it from a Linux desktop like I was doing it, a lot of the instructions are actually based on Windows, so that makes it easy if people are coming from Windows. But if you're doing it on Linux, it's just using a command like dd. You're using dd, and then you're copying the image file over to the raw micro SD card. Now, the reason that that's important is the Pi is a little bit weird in the sense that, and I can't believe I don't have it. I don't have one sitting in front of me to show it the camera here. But it's interesting because there are actually no smarts on the Pi by default. Okay, the Raspberry Pi, like you're used to thinking, like when you boot up a computer, you plug it in to your monitor, you plug in your power supply and so forth. Even if there's nothing on the computer, Windows hasn't been installed or Linux hasn't been installed or whatever, there's still a boot screen that comes up. It'll tell you that maybe you need to format your disk or whatever. But
the BIOS, right?
Yeah, the BIOS comes up. There's no BIOS screen on a Raspberry Pi. And I cannot tell you how much this freaked me out the first time I actually powered this thing on. I'm not easily freaked out by this stuff, but I'm going like, damn, this thing is broken. I ordered it. It does, it's like, I have to send it back and so forth. It's like, oh, maybe there's something else that I'm missing. So I'm looking all over the place. And you'd think that this would be the sort of stuff that would just sort of jump out at you. But it doesn't come with a lot of information. Unless you go to Amazon. You can get kits on Amazon that's, the starter kit. And it comes with, and by the way, if you're really new to this and you don't want to totally freak yourself out, I'd recommend that you get a Pi that comes with a case. It comes with Linux on a little micro SD card, so you don't have to figure all this stuff out for yourself, okay? But if you do go this route, know that until you plug in that micro SD card, nothing happens, okay? You've got it powered on, you've got it hooked up to your monitor, and it's just blank, okay? And it's just blank, and you think to yourself, this thing is broken, this thing doesn't work, the light's on, okay, the power light's on, so it must be working. No, nothing. It's just dead. But believe it or not, that's actually the way that it's actually set up. So everything is on that card. So it's actually vitally important that you copy the operating system properly to that micro SD card. And again, if you take a look here, there's some good instructions on here. How to get the utility, how to copy the data file. It's I like this particular one because it has a nice little tutorial on it. How to format the micro SD card, how to copy the image over, and so forth. So that when you do finally plug that sucker in, and I'm not ashamed to point out that the first 2 or 3 times that I made a micro SD card with Linux on it, that nothing happened. Nothing happened, which I was ready to send it back. I just thought, this thing's broken. Except for the fact that I'd ordered a second one, and it was broken as well. So, which led me to believe that, what was broken was probably me.
And when you finally discovered it, was it a slap upside the head? I mean,
yeah, kind of, because it took a few minutes for it basically to copy the image file over to. I mean, obviously it takes a while to copy all the data over to the micro SD card. Plug the micro SD card, and lo and behold, the thing comes up on the screen. There's a small handful of questions at the beginning. What's your username? What kind of a password do you want? Is this the environment you can run? Yes, 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 yes. And then boom, all of a sudden you're running a full desktop off a Raspberry Pi. So this is, I tried 2 or 3 different ones. I tried the one that's actually on the raspberrypi.org site. They've got a couple of, there's a noob distribution there. There's a I could go to the Raspberry. I won't go to the Raspberry Pi site there, but there's also a Debian distribution there for Raspbian, RASPBIAN, Raspberry Pi Debian, which is also available off the site. And I didn't like either of those quite as much as some of the other graphical ones that I looked at. Now, the catch with the graphical ones, and there are several of them actually. You can run Fedora 21. In fact, I should send you the link for this one as well. There's a list of a whole bunch of different distributions. Fedora 21, as you know, Fedora is running on Fedora 23, so we're a little ways back. There's an Ubuntu 15.04 mate that you can install. There's RISC OS. There's a few variations. There's some Media Center stuff, Media Center centric, in other words, so that you can build your own, Media Center box for the home on Raspberry Pi. So there are a few different ones out there, but as an actual desktop environment, that's the one that I wound up going with, the Mate.
So in other words, had you not purchased more than one of these, and then you realized that both of them weren't booting up, you would not have you would have thought it was broken. But the odds of having 2 that were broken, obviously, we told you something was wrong. I mean, I've never used a computer that didn't have a
BIOS.
Yeah, I mean, so
neither had I.
Yeah. So, do they make a version with a BIOS, or
no?
They don't.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And again, I thought it would be good to sort of cover this on the show, so that if somebody, because I do push hobbyist kits like this. I mean, I do talk about stuff like that.
Well, I have talked to a lot of people who had it. I've never heard this story from them. It's because they bought a kit and were not subjected, say, hey, I put this in and I thought it was broken. I mean, never heard that story. I mean, David Perry, we've had a lot of people who bought them, and I've never heard that from them. So,
well, like I said, if you buy a complete kit, if you buy the Pi with a case, with a board, the board with the case, and you buy it with the micro SD card, you buy it with all the little bits already included, you're not going to run into this.
Got
it.
it.
And the Raspberry Pi people claim, and I have no reason to doubt them, that they test every single one of them. That every single board has been booted before it leaves.
Sure, which is reasonable.
Which is reasonable. And if that's the case, then there's no reason. There wouldn't have been a lot of reason other than damage in transit that my board wouldn't have booted.
Well, you've been warned now. That's if you think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is so I mentioned this one because I tried 3 or 4. I might have tried 5. I tried a few different desktop versions, and this one was really nice. It's nice. It's friendly. It's responsive. I mean, you got to remember that this is a fairly low-powered computer. It's not. It's not like a. I mean, what's my notebook here? It's an old computer, and it's a Core i3, dual processor. I've got a quad core in my thing here. These aren't the, they're not the the fastest systems out there. So it's kind of
What's
important
their
to get
intent?
something that's reasonably responsive.
Yeah, it wasn't their intent. I mean, that's
No, that wasn't their intent. And it's, I mean, people using, they build robots, they build media centers. They don't usually build desktops.
right.
But
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, in the interest of time, Marcel, I want to move to Linux playtime.
all right.
Although this hasn't been a lot of fun.
It's all playtime. It's all playtime.
Let's talk a little bit about Play on Linux. And,
Okay. I know I've talked about wine in the past here. Well, I don't mean this wine. Cheers.
The Windows emulator.
No. Because wine, WINE, actually stands for wine is not an emulator. Okay.
My bad.
See, wine is not an emulator. It's a recursive acronym. I haven't had that much to drink. I swear. I swear I've not had that much to drink. But anyway, yeah, it's a recursive acronym. Wine is not an emulator. Anyway, what it is an environment with it mimics. I mean, it has all its own calls. So it's actually a native environment that interprets all the Windows stuff and provides its own, its own environment that translates all this stuff that makes it possible for this stuff to run. And wine's come along.
That's what I meant to say. Not
Yeah,
me.
Yeah. But wine's come a long way. I mean, and there are actually commercial versions of wine out there. There's a company called Crossover, or the product is called Crossover. Anyway, Crossover Wine. Quick, Ben, I know that you're right on top of it, so I'll let you type it up. Crossover Wine. Go look it up. Crossover Wine. But Crossover is it's actually a great company and it's a great product. If you have need of a particular application, a Windows application that actually needs, there it is, Code Weavers. They're good people too. They really are. If you have an application that must run under Windows, that you actually need to run under Windows, and you've got a Linux desktop, this is actually a good way to try some of this stuff. Now, what Wine is also available now. Theirs is kind of a packaged, really friendly. They provide additional support and so forth. So there's a good reason to download and install Wine. And in fact, there's a version of Wine that runs on Mac, so that you can run your stuff there. But alternatively, you can also get Wine just as something that you install apt-get install Wine. But there's also Play on Linux. Now, Play on Linux, the reason that one is interesting is it's specifically tuned and engineered with the idea that you're going to install Linux games. Okay, and it's got a nice, it's not, I won't claim that it's the prettiest thing in the entire universe, but it's got a nice graphical front end that, with a lot of the more popular, Windows games from recent and days past as well. So if you've got Windows games that are sitting back there and you want to actually run and install these things, Play on Linux is a way to do it. And I mean, I've got a whole bunch of disks sitting back there. I've actually done this myself. So I wanted to suggest that as a possibility for somebody who wanted to run Linux, but has got all these old games that are still sitting back there that they might actually might want to tackle. So Play on Linux. It's easy. I mean, you install the program, you run it, and some things work better than others. I won't claim for a moment that everything works perfectly under Wine. It doesn't.
Why is everything in French, though?
No. Did I give you the French site when I...
Well, I'm looking at the windows, the different screens, the example screens. It's all in French.
Perhaps.
Well, probably because the person who's taking the screenshots is French himself.
That's very. I don't know. I mean, I sent you to the site because that's actually the site where Play on Linux is developed and distributed. But if you're running a Linux distribution, I can almost guarantee.
Yes.
That if it's a recent Linux distribution, you actually don't have to go to the site and download it. It's part of your software repository, so you can just install it. And in fact, Play on Linux. There it is, and it just comes up. Poof. There it is on my screen, which you can't see it. It's sitting over here.
Okay. Now, Steam news.
Yeah, I mean, I continue to play games on Steam because I like the idea of being able to run some of the bigger, more popular games. One of the ones that I have been wanting to do, I haven't tested this. I thought I'd mention it because it's they've said that they're finally going to do it. So one of the games I wanted to try out was Ark: Survival of the Fittest, because dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's beautifully rendered too. Look at that.
It is. It is. It's gorgeous. If you check out the video, it's like it's kind of a it's a winner take all. Last human standing. A human along with their animals or whatever. But it's really a cool game, and I have wanted to get my hands on this one and try this one for a long time. So for the gamers out there, I wanted to point this one out because this is one of the ones that's been hotly anticipated for a long time on Linux. The games I've been playing lately in Steam have been I've been playing Civilization because I've gotten kind of hooked on simulation games. I play The Sims.
Of course.
I play SimCity. But this is kind of like over the top cool. And I'm really looking forward to this one. So as soon as this thing becomes available, I'm going to put my money down on it, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, look at the. If
I've seen this on I've seen this on Twitch a lot, and it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it looks seriously cool, and of course, like a lot of these games, you start out with with the basics, and if you survive long enough, you get to upgrade and and get bigger, badder weapons and bigger, badder. It's a little bit sandboxy, but it's I don't know. I think of it more as a
but it is very competitive,
so to speak.
Yeah.
He starts off with a 6-shooter.
No, he starts off with a hatchet, and then he has to kind of develop himself from there.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of games like that. If you and in fact, that's a there are tons of books written on modern game theory, and I'm not talking about the game theory that was in the movie Beautiful Mind. I'm talking primarily about the idea of how do you get people to play games and how do you get them hooked on the games to stay with the game. And one of the ways that you do it, and games like this are, I mean, most games like this work like that. Most games work like that today. You start out with something relatively simple. You have a simple tutorial, you walk them through it. Here are the basics, okay? And it's like, oh, here's an enemy for you to combat. And it's pretty damned easy to defeat the enemy, okay? And it's like, oh, cool, you won, achievement unlocked, right? You've played this, achievement unlocked. It's like, you beat the enemy. And then it's like, here's an upgraded version of your weapon, which means you can go after bigger and badder enemies. And then they just keep scaling it up over and over again. So the idea is that you've got these little victories, along the way. And to keep you interested, obviously, it's got to be a little bit more difficult. So it's always this, I'm reaching just a little bit further, fighting a bigger foe, failing, trying again, getting a little bit better, and so forth. And you just sort of keep that going forever. And simulations, Minecraft is like that, and of course, you can run Minecraft on a Linux server. Is like that. I mean, you build up your arsenal, you build up your tools. You start out with just wooden stuff. You move to stone, you move to iron, you move to diamond. Or you're building a city. You've got little tiny buildings and so forth, and then eventually you've got small factories that can produce minor materials, and then you build bigger factories and more efficient factories, and then all of a sudden you're producing finished goods, and it's it's kind of a theme of pretty much all gaming these days. But yes, no, this is one that I'm really looking forward to, and I know I keep mentioning Steam on this show, but it's other than taking your old Windows games and running it using something like Play on Linux, which by the way I do recommend. If you've got the old games there and you miss them and you want to play them, then by all means give it a try. But Steam is kind of where I find myself on a regular basis.
All right.
Well, Steam really does extend that extend the hand and say hey, come game with us. No matter what platform you have, you'll be able to play your Steam game, and that is. I don't want to say that's unique because I'm sure other people do it, but Steam really is going out of their way to make that point.
Have either of you guys? I know this has nothing to do specifically with Linux, but have either of you guys tried out any of the VR headsets? Either of you two?
Yes, I've tried the HTC Vive.
And?
Well, as
I haven't talked to an actual human who's tried it. You know,
Yes.
I've
As Craig likes to point out, when I first tried it, I did get disoriented after I tried it for about 15 minutes. But while I was using it, make sure everything's tight around your head, like you have like a sloth, kind of strangling you. I really do like it. I really do.
I have the cheap version.
Google Cardboard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Google Cardboard. It's you plug your phone into it, and it's okay. It's not quite as cool, but that's as far as I've gotten with VR. And I've even got a spare one here that hasn't been assembled yet. See?
Oh my gosh, look at that.
That I think is going to be a lot of people's first experience, and then the second experience is probably going to be they have a friend that purchased one. But I think a lot of people can see the supposed value of virtual reality. Like a lot of the experiences that virtual reality is going to offer you are going to be very, very unique, and I think it's probably going to have a pretty slow adoption, regardless of all the quote-unquote selling out that all of these systems are doing. I think people are actually going to like it. Unlike, we compare it to 3D TVs here, but unlike 3D TVs or what have you, I think people are going to like VR.
Well, I think it's the idea, it's the immersive idea, and of creating your own world. And Minecraft is, let's go back to Minecraft. Minecraft is one of those games that I think is going to be huge in VR. You walk around, you manipulate the stuff with your own hands. I think that's going to be pretty awesome. Craig looks like he's about to say something. I don't want to interrupt him again.
No, I mean, I was hoping if we can get a little bit to the big business.
Oh, yes. Let's move on. Let's move on because we never get to talk about that. Google is a big search engine, as you know. And, of course, there are a couple of other small players out there, Bing and so forth. But I wanted to mention this one because it works really, really, really well. I've actually installed it for a couple of different customers now where you've got, like, corporate data, okay? Now, you can buy a box from Google. You can actually buy a Google search box, for your own personal corporate data. And by personal corporate data, I mean, like, you've got documents, you've got, all sorts of things, but you don't want to make them public, all right? No. They're on your intranet. There's stuff that you want to run yourself internally that you don't want to make available to the big wide world, and that can be costly. One of those Google boxes is a lot of money, and depending on how big a box you need, and and what kind of support that you're looking for, it's an ongoing and expensive proposition. So over the years, there have been a lot of different little search engines that you can build in the Linux world, and the one that I have used a few times now that I keep coming back to is something called Open Search Server, and you can actually get to that one by going to opensearchserver.com. It runs, and I'm sorry, Craig, but does it actually use? Yeah, it does use Java. It does. But it also uses Apache Tomcat, so it runs on its own port on Apache Tomcat, and it does a fantastic job of indexing any number of different documents, whether they're doc files, HTML documents, PDFs. It'll actually walk through and index PDFs, image files, all sorts of things. It's and it continues to spider and continues to be available. So it's always watching your system to see what, if there are any changes, what's available. It maintains its own internal database, and it's frightfully, and I mean frightfully, easy to set up.
Okay.
You go to OpenSearch Server, you download, install it, and you start up the search server. There's a web interface. You go to your machine :9090, and you have access to the full environment, and you can start spidering your system. Works best on the big Linux versions like Red Hat Linux or CentOS. Everyone I've done so far has been on CentOS, which is kind of like white box Red Hat Linux, so to speak. You want to definitely check that one out. Virtual machines, I know we're running out of time here, but virtual machines, all these different things. If you're at all worried about doing what I do and blowing away your machine every time you want to try something new, for God's sakes, run the darn thing inside a virtual machine. The easiest thing you can do. In the past, I've always pushed VirtualBox. I've always talked about VirtualBox being easy and a nice way to do it. Almost every Linux distribution, modern Linux distribution, comes with its own virtualization built into the kernel these days. You don't need to go and install something else. From your repos, just install Virt Manager. Just think of it as Virtual Machine Manager, VIRT-manager, and you can just create and install as many machines as you want. It'll support Windows machines. It'll support different Linux distributions. You point it at a bootable image file, like an ISO file that you download, and you have absolutely no worries about destroying your system, about losing your valuable data.
Marcel, real quick, what are you up to? What people just tell us quickly?
Well, I'm as I've mentioned before, I'm a computer consultant. Salmar Consulting is my company, and I continue to work with a lot of different companies doing a variety of web type stuff. I do corporate systems administration for things like I said, like search servers and so forth. I also created the conversion engine for Kobo self-publishing. So I do lots of different things.
Marcel, thank you so much for this. Stay with us to the end. Coming up on tomorrow is Fracture in the first hour. They create images on glass. You're just gonna have to see these things. They're absolutely amazing, and we're gonna have them on the show talking about this really cool technology that they developed. And we're gonna have the CEO and co-founder of Fracture on the show with us. And then, of course, in the second hour, computer and technology news brought to you by Slimware Utilities, the official optimization software of Computer America. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Marcel, for being with us. And Ben and I will see you here, same time, same place. So until tomorrow afternoon, this is Craig Crossman, hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay, everybody. Thanks again for watching. Boy, we just made it by the skin of our teeth. And actually,
just barely.
Yeah, just barely. And thank you for being with us here. Marcel, again, always a pleasure. And we'll see you next month. Okay?
All right, take care out there. Bye, Ben.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.